Hey, you might want to brace yourself for this, because what I'm about to break down has the kind of psychological whiplash that makes people drop their phone, stare into space, and rethink every "I don't care anymore" speech they ever gave. They've been performing this little act. You know the one. The act where they swear your name never crosses their mind. The act where they pretend you're some distant blip in their history. The act where they talk like they've reached a level of inner tranquility that gurus would admire. Yet somehow, these same people could recite your posting schedule with the accuracy of someone tracking satellite orbits. They don't just check your activity, they anticipate it. They don't just notice your uploads, they preload their curiosity before you even hit post. And the wildest part, they think no one can see it, because on paper they look detached. On paper they look composed. On paper they're unbothered. But behind the scenes, they're the research department. They're the observation deck. They're the anonymous shadow refreshing your page like it's a private ritual. They claim peace, but their behavior screams monitoring. They claim distance, but their habits scream proximity. They claim indifference, but their patterns betray attachment so loud it practically echoes. Now let's address the blockbuster move they're so proud of, blocking you. They treated it like a grand finale, as if cutting you off visually would somehow cut you off emotionally, as if restricting access would give them inner clarity, as if removing you from their timeline would magically remove you from their subconscious. They pressed that block button with confidence, announced it like a moral achievement, and waited for the freedom to kick in. But here's where everything slipped, because 3 days later, there they were, sneaking back in through a freshly created burner account, a profile with a random name, no followers, no photo, and the subtle desperation of someone who realized too late that the block didn't give them the relief they expected. They thought eliminating your presence would eliminate their curiosity. Instead, it intensified it. They blocked you for peace, but the absence of your updates only created noise inside their own head. Blocking didn't remove you. It removed their access to you. And in their world, that's not peace. That's panic. Let's break down the psychology of the burner, because this is where the real story begins. A burner account is not an accident. It's not spontaneous. It's not casual. It's engineered. It's a decision born from tension, from unresolved questions, from emotional friction they can't soothe. Nobody wakes up at 2 a.m. and creates a fake profile because they're thriving. They do it because their mind refuses to let them disconnect. They do it because curiosity is eating them alive. They do it because pretending not to care is exhausting, but admitting they care feels even harder. And yet, they try to hide it. They act like the burner is invisible, like their digital mask makes them untouchable, like the absence of a profile picture makes their presence undetectable. But there is always a trail, always a pattern, always a timestamp, always a moment when the same account views your story within seconds of posting. Too fast to be coincidence. Too precise to be random. Let's talk about why they're so invested in your posting times. Specifically, it's not just about your content. It's about predictability. When someone tracks your schedule, they're craving familiarity. They want to know when you'll appear, not to support you, but to stabilize themselves. Your routine gives them a psychological anchor. When you post, it tells them you're still moving. When you disappear, it triggers questions they can't control. Your activity is the weather report of their emotional landscape. They check because they fear losing the sense of connection they pretend they don't want. They memorize your patterns because your presence, even from a distance, helps them regulate their own internal unrest. That's why they study you even after blocking you. The block didn't end anything. It just pushed their obsession underground. And let's be brutally honest here. They didn't block you because you were disturbing them. They blocked you because you were affecting them. There's a difference. Disturbance is external, effect is internal. You weren't chaos in their life. You were clarity they couldn't handle. Seeing you continue, seeing you improve, seeing you steady, seeing you unaffected, that wasn't peaceful for them. That was threatening. They weren't protecting their peace. They were protecting their ego. Because the moment your life started looking stable without them, their narrative cracked. The story they told themselves, I'm doing better, I'm moving forward, I'm unbothered, started to feel shaky. Blocking you wasn't about avoiding you. It was about avoiding the truth that your existence still influences them. That's what they were running from, not you. The mirror. The burner account was the confession. Whether they realize it or not, the burner revealed everything they tried to hide. It revealed that the block was not emotional closure, it was emotional withdrawal followed by relapse. It revealed that their peace was temporary and conditional. It revealed that their pride was louder than their honesty. They wanted the world to believe they'd outgrown you, while privately checking every detail of your life, trying to decode whether you've outgrown them. People don't check for people they've forgotten. They don't hide behind fake accounts to observe people they don't value. They don't study someone's posting routine unless that person still carries emotional weight. And they definitely don't bury themselves in digital disguise unless they're battling an internal conflict they refuse to name. Let's dissect that conflict. On one side, pride tells them to detach. Pride tells them to block you. Pride tells them to act healed, composed, and unaffected. Pride tells them to keep their distance so they don't risk exposure. But on the other side, curiosity tells them to look. Curiosity tells them to check your stories. Curiosity tells them to watch your progress. Curiosity tells them to stay updated just enough to feel connected, but hidden enough to avoid accountability. They're stuck between the fear of being seen and the fear of missing out. That's why the burner feels like a lifeline to them. It allows them to indulge their attachment while pretending they've let go. It gives them access without vulnerability. It gives them the illusion of distance while they're actually hovering at the closest edge. Meanwhile, you're simply existing, posting normally, living your life, making moves, growing, evolving, unaware of the psychological circus happening behind their screen. You're not the one tracking anything. You're not the one hiding. You're not the one switching accounts like undercover personnel. You're not the one refreshing pages. You're not calculating posting times, analyzing online patterns, or constructing emotional strategies. You're breathing, that's it. And this is what stings them the most. Your neutrality is louder than their denial. Your calmness contradicts their assumptions. Your consistency challenges their storyline. Your lack of reaction steals the power they tried to gain by blocking you. That's why the obsession grows, because they expected you to crumble. They expected you to react. They expected you to spiral. They expected you to notice the block and chase clarity. They expected your world to pause. They expected emotional proof that they still mattered. And when none of those expectations were fulfilled, the pressure inside them intensified. That pressure is what sends them to the burner. Not longing, not nostalgia, pressure. pressure created by their own narrative collapsing. Let's go deeper into why the same people who block you also watch you the closest. When someone blocks you publicly, they receive validation through witnesses. People applaud their boundary. People admire their growth. People believe the performance. The block becomes a social badge. But in private, without the audience, the truth hits harder, because the separation reveals whether the block was empowerment or avoidance. A real boundary brings stability. A fake one brings discomfort. And guess what discomfort demands? Monitoring. That's why they track you. That's why they follow you from secret corners. That's why they slip back into your online world anonymously. Because their block wasn't closure, it was a gamble. A gamble that you would react in a way that validated them. When you didn't, they had to search for answers themselves. The burner became their only access point to the version of you they can no longer encounter directly. But let's be clear, the burner is not a sign of strength. It's a sign of unresolved attachment. It's the digital version of pacing outside a door they locked themselves out of. They created the distance, but couldn't handle the fallout. They shut the door, but couldn't sit with the emptiness behind it. They removed you from their field of vision, then panicked at the lack of information. It's not power, it's withdrawal. And here's the twist. They don't even realize how transparent they are. They think they're subtle. They think they're hidden. They think the burner protects them from being exposed. But patterns always speak. Behavior always reveals intention, and your awareness isn't blind. But the beauty of it? You never needed to expose them. You don't have to confront them. You don't need to prove anything. All you have to do is keep living. Because your existence is the trigger. Your consistency is the catalyst. Your growth is the reminder. Your presence, even the digital shadow of it, is enough to disrupt their emotional structure. What they don't understand is that you're not difficult to read. They are. You don't change your timing. You don't alter your habits. You don't adjust your rhythm for anyone. Meanwhile, they react to your every move like it's a personal event. They analyze your posts as if hidden codes exist in the captions. They study your timestamps like they're decoding confidential briefings. They wait for your uploads as if something inside them refuses to rest without your latest update. And they still say they don't think about you. That's the funniest part. Because every hour they spend pretending not to care only adds more depth to the truth they're trying to bury. Let's examine why your presence has such a hold on them. It's not because they're possessed. It's not because they're weak. It's because you represent something they haven't managed within themselves. You represent what they tried to walk away from, but never actually processed. You represent the version of their life they can't rewrite. You represent a chapter they closed too fast and now keep rereading in secret. That's why your posting times matter more to them than they admit. It's not the content. It's the feeling you give them when you appear. Even through a screen, a feeling they don't know how to categorize. A feeling they tried to escape by blocking you. A feeling that chased them into a burner 3 days later. They try to hide this emotional tension behind rational explanations. They'll tell their friends it's curiosity. They'll tell themselves it's harmless checking. They'll label it just looking. But you and I both know that's not how casual observation works. Casual doesn't refresh. Casual doesn't monitor. Casual doesn't memorize patterns. Casual doesn't appear within seconds of your upload. Casual doesn't create an entire hidden identity just to watch someone from a distance. That's not curiosity. That's fixation, dressed in cheap denial. And here's something even more revealing. Your progress bothers them. Not because they wish harm on you. Not because they resent your improvement. But because your progress contradicts the story they told to justify leaving. They expected you to crumble. They expected you to fade. They expected your energy to fracture. Instead, you stabilized. You got clearer. You became grounded. You started moving forward. And your forward movement became the one thing they can't unsee. Every new photo triggers a thought. Every update stirs a memory. Every appearance pokes at their ego. Every sign of your confidence unsettles the narrative they crafted about why things ended. That's why they track you. That's why they watch in secret. That's why their burner is more active than their real account ever was. Because being distant didn't make them free. It made them observant. And observing you didn't give them closure. It intensified their internal conflict. Let's unfold that conflict layer by layer. It has 3 parts. Phase 1 is denial. They tell themselves you don't matter. They tell others they've detached. They convince themselves the block is a new beginning. They perform control. They perform maturity. They perform calm. All while trying to silence the part of their mind that still wants to check what you're doing. The block becomes their shield, but shields don't erase the impulse behind them. Phase 2 is withdrawal. The moment your presence disappears, something inside them starts rewriting the narrative. They wonder what you're posting. They wonder who you're speaking to. They wonder what your life looks like without their eyes on it. They wonder if you're thriving or suffering, calm or agitated, connected or alone. Withdrawal is never about missing you. It's about missing access to the version of themselves that was shaped around you. Phase 3 is relapse. This is where the burner appears. The burner is the digital version of, I just want to see something real quick. It begins as a quiet urge. Then curiosity takes over. Then anxiety about missing details takes over. And before they know it, they're typing in a random name, choosing a generic picture, and slipping right back into your world like a stranger with too much interest. And the entire time, they think no one can see the unraveling. Let's dive into why this unraveling is happening now. It's because your stability is interrupting their internal narrative. Their block was supposed to make you crumble. The distance was supposed to make you chase. The disconnect was supposed to make you question your worth. But none of that happened. Instead, you kept posting. You kept living. You kept showing consistency. And consistency is the one thing they cannot dismiss. Because consistency means you're unaffected, and being unaffected contradicts their entire emotional storyline. That contradiction is what drags them to the burner. Because once someone realizes the narrative they created is falling apart, they start searching for new information to rebuild it. Your account becomes the map they consult. Your updates become their emotional thermostat. Your presence becomes their unspoken anchor. They want to know if you still glow. They want to know if you're still strong. They want to know if they made a mistake. They want to know if you replaced them. They want to know if the world still sees you the way they once did. But here's what makes it even more layered. They don't want you to know that they want to know. They don't want you to see their questions. They don't want you to have access to their vulnerability. They don't want you to see the cracks in their performance. So they conduct their emotional research from the shadows. Now let's analyze the deeper level of this, the level most people never talk about. Your presence disrupted their emotional architecture long before the block ever happened. You were a reference point in their life. Even when things were unsteady, even when things weren't perfect, your energy was familiar. Familiarity is powerful. Familiarity becomes a comfort people don't recognize until it's gone. And the moment they removed you, they also removed that familiarity. That's why your updates became important. Not because they want you back, not because they want to reconnect, but because you are a psychological constant. Removing a constant creates instability. Instability forces people to search for anchors, and your account became their anchor without them realizing it. That's why your posting times became something they remembered. That's why your page became something they revisited. That's why your content became something they monitored. It wasn't intentional, it was instinctive. Because the part of them that claims indifference is not the part watching you. The part lurking isn't the part speaking. The part studying you isn't the part performing pride. They're split within themselves, and you're the trigger for that split. Let's go deeper into that split. There is the version of them that wanted to move forward. That version blocked you. That version created the narrative. That version spoke confidently. That version convinced others they were done. But then there is the other version, the version that still feels something unresolved. That version checks your posts. That version memorizes your timing. That version scrolls through your page when they should be sleeping. That version lingers longer than they should, searching for clues about where you stand. You didn't create that split. Their denial did. And the more they try to suppress one version, the louder the other becomes. That's why they escalate. That's why they lurk harder. That's why they monitor deeper. They're battling themselves, not you. But here's where this becomes unexpectedly poetic. Your existence forces them to confront the parts of themselves they tried to walk away from. Your stability forces them to acknowledge they misjudged your strength. Your growth forces them to question the narrative they used to justify the block. Your energy forces them to see that they didn't actually detach. They just lost visibility. That loss of visibility is the real root of their obsession. People can stomach losing a person. What they can't stomach is losing the ability to track the person. The unknown is what eats them alive. When they blocked you, they thought they were creating closure. Instead, they created uncertainty. Suddenly, they couldn't see what you were doing, who you were speaking to, how you were moving, whether you were fine or flourishing. That gap, those empty spaces, they filled with imagination. And imagination has a habit of building scenarios far worse than reality. Their fear didn't start when they saw your newest post from the burner. Their fear began in the quiet gap between blocking you and checking the burner for the first time. Because in that gap, their mind wandered. And minds never wander toward calm outcomes. They wandered toward the possibilities they can't handle. They wondered if you replaced them faster than they predicted. They wondered if you recovered quicker than they hoped. They wondered if you ever looked back at all. They wondered if the block made you relieved instead of shaken. That wondering dragged them straight into your world again. Just from a distance, they hoped you wouldn't detect. They didn't create the burner because they wanted to watch. They created it because they couldn't handle not watching. Let's go even further. Do you know why they memorized your posting times? Because predictability is the only comfort they have left. When someone loses direct access to you, they cling to whatever part of your routine they can still predict. Your rhythm becomes their anchor. Your timing becomes their reassurance. If you vanished completely, they would panic. They don't want the connection, but they also can't survive the disappearance. So they use your routine as a way to regulate the emotional chaos they don't admit they feel. Every time you post, it sends them a strange kind of relief. Not happiness, just confirmation that the world hasn't shifted in a way that removes you completely. They want to pretend you're irrelevant, but they still need your presence to stabilize the parts of themselves they didn't outgrow. That's why they refresh your updates as if it's their daily check-in. They're not watching you. They're watching their own unresolved tension. But here's where the story gets even more twisted. They don't even like the version of themselves they become. When they're watching you, they resent the curiosity. They resent the pull. They resent the dependence. They resent the burner. They resent how you seem to move forward while they stay stuck in a loop of their own design. They resent the part of themselves that wants to stay connected. But resentment doesn't translate into detachment. It translates into more monitoring. Your growth reminds them of their stagnation. Your confidence reminds them of their doubt. Your peace reminds them of their chaos. Your presence reminds them of their split. And that reminder is what keeps them circling your world even after blocking you. They're not returning because they want you back. They're returning because they can't figure out why their life didn't stabilize the way they expected after leaving. They're returning because the fantasy they crafted about how free they would feel didn't match the reality. They're returning because walking away gave them distance, not clarity. Your updates became the only mirror they have left. Let's explore something people rarely admit. They didn't block you to escape you. They blocked you to escape how they acted around you. They blocked you to escape their own reactions. They blocked you because seeing you triggered something in them they refused to confront. That's why they're on the burner, because the block never resolved their discomfort. It only hid the external source of it. But the internal turbulence, that stayed. They thought removing you meant removing the pull. Instead, the pull intensified. The block didn't silence the part of them that still feels connected. It just made that part louder. They told themselves they were choosing peace, but what they were really choosing was avoidance. Avoidance doesn't erase emotion. Avoidance incubates it. And when emotions incubate, they grow stronger in the dark. The burner became the